Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
Caitlin Clark, I want to listen to this clip. She is clearly frustrated. I agree with this poster. Clearly frustrated, but she's being a good teammate. I get that she's not going to go off and throw her coach under the bus. But in watching this, I have to tell you, I don't believe. I was going to say I don't believe a word she says, but she does say one thing I do believe, but she says it in a way to cover for what the coach wants to do. So let's take a listen to this, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Indiana Fever and their situation with Stephanie White and with Christie Sides last year as well, and kind of get into what this says for the Indiana Fever for the rest of this season.
Steph has talked about kind of taking some pressure off you with Ari kind of running point in some actions and you playing off the ball. Just how do you think that will help when you reintegrate onto the court?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be nice probably not to have to bring the ball up against pressure 94 feet. But like I said, that's what I'm best at. So we're still going to do a lot of that. It's, I think, finding a balance and finding the ways to give the defense different looks and, me becoming a better screener and being a good screener and coming off of screens and screening for Kels and, all that different type of stuff that's a whole nother layer of things that the other team has to prepare for. So, like I said, I feel like it makes us less predictable. And, you're still going to see a lot of the same things that we do, but at times, move us off the ball, and especially out of timeouts and drops, maybe not so much our live flow and our live play. I think we'll be solid.
Wow. Now, you all have seen Caitlin Clark talk basketball a lot. Do you believe any of this? Does this look like a basketball player who believes what she's saying, who has bought in what the coach is trying to do? I don't. She's listing all this stuff that sounds horrible and saying, "Oh, it makes us more unpredictable, and the other team's going to have to prepare for that." No, not at all. And we've said this before. In another thing, Stephanie White is stopping her team, stopping the biggest thing that the other team worries about. She's doing the other team the biggest possible favor she could do by stopping the one thing that they're worried about before they even have to deal with it. Yeah. Sorry, Caitlin, they're not going to have to prepare for any of that. They are thrilled by it, in fact. They are thrilled. Now all they have to do is not worry about you. The other stuff's easy. They can handle that. That's old school WNBA stuff. It just puts them on a fair footing in terms of how the basketball is played. This is the greatest clip any other team could watch leading into a game with the Indiana Fever. It is absolutely insane that we are here, that we actually went from Christie Sides to a situation that is even worse. The Fever were better and more fun to watch last year with less talent on the roster. Do you understand that? Christie Sides got more out of the roster that she had than Stephanie White is getting out of the roster she has. And now I know one thing we're going to get is like people love to talk about how, oh, well, it wasn't until after the All-Star break. And well, Caitlin Clark just did it herself, and it wasn't Christie Sides. Look, Christie Sides is not a great head coach. I think actually, from what I've seen of her and what she does bring, she's a fantastic assistant coach, which I think she just did for Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But Christie Sides, with what she had, performed a lot better last year than Stephanie White. And by the way, I don't care who the head coach is, you do have to. She did have to, even if Caitlin Clark was started ignoring her, Christie Sides had to wake up to that, see that the team was performing better, and be okay with relinquishing the keys, because otherwise she could have been, hey, Erica Wheeler's going to start, and Christy Wallace is going to continue to start, and Katie Lou Samuelson is going to continue to start. Let's not forget that as much as we were upset with some of the roster stuff and the starting lineups, Christie Sides did make adjustments. It wasn't just, oh, Caitlin Clark decided to ignore the coach and run on everything. Do we forget that Katie Lou was a starter and Christy Wallace was a starter and Erica Wheeler was playing massive minutes and Alyssa Smith was playing massive minutes, and that also changed? Lexi Hull got into the starting lineup. Damiris Dantas came in and started playing more. Alyssa Smith started playing less. Christy Wallace went from starter to literally on the bench without getting into a game. There were a lot more changes made by Christie Sides in a positive direction than just she let Caitlin Clark take over. And the one other thing I'd like to add is it was not just after the All-Star break. It was not after 26 games. That is not really true. They started 1-8 with that insanely tough schedule, right? The 11 games in 20 days. It was 2-9 over the full 11, right? Playing, I think, the Liberty twice and the Connecticut Sun twice in that. Like, it was difficult in terms of games and days, but also who they were playing. They went 19-12 the rest of the way, okay? Now, they were 9-5 after the month-long Olympic break, okay? That means between the 1-8 start and the 9-5 finish, they were a very solid 10-7 after the 1-8 start, but before the month-long break, okay? This ship turned around long before the All-Star break. Now, it took it to another level, right? Again, Caitlin Clark had been playing basketball nonstop for a long, long time. And so, yes, that break helped. A lot of other players and teams got that break as well, and it definitely helped. But let's not pretend that they were not playing good basketball for a while before the break. So it did not take nearly as long for the team to turn around last season as a lot of people like to tell you. We are 19 games into a 44-game schedule, folks. This is almost the halfway point. I don't want to hear about it takes time and Caitlin was hurt and they need to gel and all that stuff. No, she's had more than enough time. Stephanie White also had this advantage. She had the entire 2024 season of the Indiana Fever to look at and to learn from. She already knew a lot of things Christie Sides didn't. Yes, she had Caitlin Clark coming in, and you saw what type of player it was. And yes, Christie Sides was absolutely resistant and said some really dumb things and talked about long twos and half a second to make a decision and all this other stuff. But as you've all seen in all sports, whether the NBA, NFL, a lot of sure things don't make it to the next level. They are busts. So there is a little bit of uncertainty. You had to fit her into the team and figure out how her game in college translated into the pros, which, as we know now, absolutely did. And yes, a lot of people thought it did, but you still had to figure it out with your brand new team. Stephanie White didn't have to figure anything out. She had the blueprint. She knew. Put the ball in Caitlin Clark's hands, run as often as you possibly can, read and react, run the pick and roll in the half-court offense with Aaliyah Boston, and you will win a lot of games. There's no reason whatsoever for Stephanie White to be struggling with this team and to be struggling with rotations. Lexi Hull just made that comment after the Valkyries game about how there's a million different rotations. Well, there shouldn't be. Not 19 games into the season, even with Caitlin Clark being hurt. Good coaches play to their players' strengths. They don't force stuff that clearly does not work and goes against what those players do well. Stephanie White has abandoned everything that made this team successful. And I don't mean just Caitlin Clark, but everything that comes off of that. Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull. She abandoned. Was there a single pick and roll with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston in the Valkyries game? No. If you can point to one, I will say, hey, I was wrong about that, but I don't remember seeing one. But no, what we're going to do is we're going to start Aari McDonald with Caitlin Clark back, sit down Lexi Hull, and put Caitlin Clark at the forward position. And Aari McDonald is going to play more minutes than she played when Caitlin Clark was hurt. Oh, and she's also going to take the most threes on the team, even though she's shooting 22% from three for the Indiana Fever this year while taking 4.5 of them a game, 1 for 7 against the Valkyries. This is absolutely insane what we are seeing from Stephanie White. And I'll also say this for those who are still willing to defend her. And I get, hey, she may turn it around, but understand this. In any other professional league, and I emphasize the word professional, when you have a player like Clark, you have the offseason changes that were made by the Indiana Fever. You have expectations of a title run in any serious city with any serious franchise. It would have started long before now. Loud voices from both the local media and the fans that the coach has to go, that the coach needs to be fired, that the coach needs to be replaced in order to save the season. But lots of people are still defending Stephanie White. And again, remember last year, Fever were starting Christy Wallace, Nalissa Smith, and she was playing a lot of minutes. Lexi Hull was sitting entire games, right? She was getting DNPs. Dantas was injured for a lot. KLS was playing too much. But even then, they were still running teams out of the gym, and they were still starting to win building around Caitlin Clark. Now they are boring. No one wants to watch this team play basketball. They are unwatchable. People still do watch because they're hoping and hoping and hoping they see the Caitlin Clark that they know and love, but they are boring to watch now, and they are losing games. They are 9-10. But hey, at least they're playing the coach's style of basketball, right? This is the Stephanie White system. Doesn't work with Caitlin Clark, but it's the Stephanie White system. The front office needs to get it in gear, but I'm worried they are actually part of the problem. But they need at some point, hopefully someone makes the realization that Clark, and I said this in my video about the All-Star Game roster and draft, Clark is the disruptive force to change the WNBA for the good going forward, bringing in a new style of play, a new level of skill, a new level of athleticism, a new level of basketball IQ. And instead, Stephanie White wants to pound away and pound away and pound away and putting that square peg into a round hole or whatever it is. That's right, right? Square peg, round hole. Yeah. A good coach who has a generational player like Caitlin Clark builds around that. Say, I'm going to build around this player. My success is going to be determined by getting in the right assets and the right style to maximize my generational player's talents. But Stephanie White says, I'm going to force this generational player to play my system. That's what Stephanie White is doing. That is the mark of a bad coach. Caitlin Clark was first team All WNBA last year. Historic rookie season. Because Christie Sides, you can say Caitlin Clark did it first by ignoring her, but Christie Sides got out of the way. Christie Sides, as I mentioned, made a lot of other lineup changes, okay? I don't think that's talked about enough, including by me. We all talked about Caitlin Clark just did her thing, and yes, Christie Sides got out of the way, but she also made a lot of other roster changes, folks, in terms of minutes played, in terms of who started. This was a better team last year with less talent. This year, their one big win, their signature win, is the first loss handed to the New York Liberty, which propelled the Fever into the Commissioner's Cup final. The first half of that game was the most Caitlin Clark-like half that the Indiana Fever have played this entire season, that we have seen this entire season. It was electric, and the coach on the sideline was clearly not happy about it. Now, did Caitlin Clark sort of ignore Christie Sides? I think we can all agree at a time she did start doing that. Like I said, still props to Christie Sides for her reaction to it and for the other changes. But Caitlin Clark, I think, was able to do that eventually, even as a rookie, and get the other players on board because they saw what could happen. And Christie Sides had no reputation in this league as a head coach. But Caitlin Clark, for whatever reason, respects Stephanie White, probably because, like a lot of fans, she bought into the Stephanie White talk, the Stephanie White sales pitches, and not the Stephanie White action and judging on that. So she's respected Stephanie White. She's got to stop that. Whether it's behind the scenes and making it clear to Coach White individually, like let them have a talk. I'm not saying this all has to be messy out in the media, but Caitlin Clark needs to put her foot down and have a conversation with this coach and be like, look, we can't both be here. This isn't going to work. We're either going to be a good team and do it my way, or you're going to have to go. If we do it your way, I'm going to go. That's what has to happen. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the players seem to be bought in with Stephanie White. I think, to Sophie Cunningham's point, I think it's more than Bonner. I think there are locker room issues. It's clear Natasha Howard doesn't want anything to do with helping Caitlin Clark be successful. That's just obvious. Anyone who says that's not true is not watching the games or not being honest with you. Now, and I use this quote in another video, but I want to mention it again because it's so important and it's on topic. Caitlin Clark said earlier in the season, I think we need to do a better job of getting me the ball in transition. Whether somebody is there or not, I think there's a fine balance of playing me off the ball and also getting the ball in my hands. That's when I'm the best in transition. Everybody knows that. And yet we still have Stephanie White talking about off the ball, off the ball, off the ball. You heard that clip with Caitlin Clark about off the ball and setting screens and all this nonsense. You have your point guard, who's generational point guard, who makes the team go, who's been injured multiple times this season already. And your incredible idea is we're just going to have her get pounded by setting off the ball screens. That's dumb. I'm sorry, I can't sugarcoat it. That is dumb. That in itself is a fireable offense by an incompetent and pathetically bad coach. It's absolutely stupid. Oh, by the way, this off the ball stuff, right? Because we keep hearing there's another thing talking about the Stephanie White talk, right? Well, we've got to get Caitlin Clark better looks. We got to get Caitlin Clark better looks. What have you seen them do to get Caitlin Clark better looks? Caitlin Clark had 0 assisted field goal attempts against the Valkyries. 12 shots, 0 of them were assisted. Caitlin Clark leads the WNBA in unassisted baskets. 19 games into a 44-game season, Stephanie White keeps telling you we've got to do a better job of getting Caitlin Clark better looks, and it never happens. Now, when Caitlin Clark is exclusively on the ball, as we saw early in the game, I mentioned this in the post game, she had 3 early rebounds. She got the ball and she went. The team got off to a super hot start, got a 9-point lead. In the third, they rallied from a 15-point deficit back to 5, led by Caitlin Clark, and they were running a little bit. The rest of the game, they were not. They were playing Stephanie White basketball, and they got their backsides handed to them. They got blown out of the gym by a Valkyries team that played closer to Caitlin Clark basketball than the Indiana Fever did. Man, 2024 seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? Remember post-Olympics, the Fever were the best show in sports? Modern, up-tempo ball. Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell both averaging 23 points a game on this incredibly insane elite level efficiency. Then we got a new front office and we all rejoiced. And Ben Daniel kept saying, in Kelly we trust. Boy, was that a mistake, huh? Don't we all look like the fool? This new front office has been terrible. Terrible. Turned the Indiana Fever, the greatest show in sports, into a boring, traditional, unwatchable WNBA team who just isn't that good. Caitlin Clark finished 4th in MVP voting, mostly. I mean, I think she was good all year, but another level after the Olympic break for sure. Again, 23 points and I believe 10 assists. She averaged 23 points and 10 assists. Why? She was fully on the ball. They were all bought into playing the Caitlin Clark system. Kelsey Mitchell. No one benefited more from Caitlin Clark being Caitlin Clark than Kelsey Mitchell, which is a story for another day because I'm getting less and less impressed with Kelsey Mitchell. By far the best basketball of her career. I believe, 23.5 points a game on 50, 45, 90. That is absolutely insane. The blueprint is there, Stephanie White. If you really, truly just want to win games, the blueprint is there for you and you are ignoring it. No more with the off-the-ball experiment. It stops today. You do not take one of the best playmakers in basketball and turn them, as Stephanie White has said multiple times, into a floor spacer. Dantas can be a floor spacer. Lexi Hull is a floor spacer. Sophie Cunningham is a floor spacer. Kelsey Mitchell is a floor spacer. Aaliyah Boston is good enough that she's a floor spacer. You have a team of floor spacers. You don't need Caitlin Clark to be wasted as a floor spacer. You are wasting a generational talent on terrible rotations, on terrible offensive. I shouldn't even say offensive plays. What are the offensive plays? What have you seen? Have any of you seen an actual offensive system that you can point to from Stephanie White? Man, look, let her cook. right? That's one of my shirts. Let her cook. The Indiana Fever front office has to let Caitlin Clark cook, or they need to fire Stephanie White sooner rather than later, because she clearly has no idea what she is doing with this offense, or worse, she does. Put on your tinfoil hats. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I just had so much more to say about Stephanie White. And again, props to Christie Sides. This is as much about being fair to Christie, who I was incredibly critical of last season. But I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, appreciate you so much for being here. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you later. Go have the day you deserve.